Marcus Webb's heart stopped the moment he heard the elevator chime at midnight. He was on the 47th floor of Hartwell Technologies, pushing his cleaning cart past the executive conference rooms, where the leather furniture cost more than his annual salary. His 6-year-old daughter Emma was asleep on the couch behind him, wrapped in his work jacket because the babysitter had canceled again and he had no other choice. The elevator meant someone was coming. At midnight, on the executive floor where only 3 people had access cards. Marcus grabbed the card handle and turned toward the conference room, but his shoes squeaked on the marble and he was too slow. The elevator doors slid open and Rachel Hartwell stepped out. Not just any executive, the CEO, the woman whose face had been on the cover of Forbes last month with the headline, "The Ice Queen of Tech." She wore a black Armani suit despite the hour, her dark hair pulled back in a severe bun, and when her eyes locked onto Marcus, they were cold enough to freeze blood. Then her gaze shifted to the open conference room door where Emma's small form was visible on the couch. The air seemed to crystallize around them. "You brought a child into my building." Rachel's voice was perfectly controlled, which somehow made it more terrifying than if she'd shouted. "After hours, into my private conference room." Marcus's mouth went dry. This job, $18 an hour, night shift, health insurance that actually covered Emma's asthma medication, was the only thing keeping him from losing custody. Jennifer's lawyer had filed the motion 2 weeks ago, and the language was burned into his brain. Father lacks stable employment and appropriate living conditions for minor child. "Ms. Hartwell, I can explain." "Conference room, now." Rachel walked past him, heels clicking on marble, and Marcus noticed her hands were shaking. Not with anger, with something else. Inside the conference room, Rachel stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Chicago's glittering skyline. When she turned to face him, something in her expression had shifted. The ice had cracked just enough to show the fear underneath. "What's your name?" "Marcus Webb, ma'am. I'm one of the night custodians. I've worked here 4 years, and I swear this has never happened before. The babysitter canceled, and I couldn't find anyone, and I was desperate. How much do you love your daughter?" The question hit Marcus like a physical blow. He blinked, completely thrown off balance. "What? Would you do anything to keep her?" Rachel's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. "Would you lie? Would you pretend? Would you let strangers believe something that isn't true if it meant she stayed with you?" Marcus's throat tightened. He looked at Emma sleeping peacefully, her small chest rising and falling, completely unaware that their entire lives were balancing on whatever happened in the next 60 seconds. "Of course I would. She's everything." Rachel nodded slowly, like she'd just made a decision that terrified her more than anything she'd ever done. "Then I need you to listen very carefully. In the next minute, I'm going to make you an offer. If you say no, you walk out of here tonight and never come back. Security will escort you out, and your employment record will show termination for cause." She paused, and her phone buzzed on the table. Marcus saw the name on the screen. Derek. Rachel's face went even paler. "But if you say yes, both our lives change forever. There's no going back, no second chances, no changing your mind in a week when you realize what you've agreed to." Marcus's pulse hammered in his ears. "I don't understand." "Pretend you're my husband." Rachel's words came out clipped and precise, like she was negotiating a merger. "Starting tomorrow, in front of everyone who matters, board members, investors, judges. Or pack your things tonight and explain to a family court judge why you lost your stable job." The room tilted. Marcus gripped the back of a chair to steady himself. "Why? Why would you possibly need—" "Because someone very dangerous is trying to take everything from me, and you're the only person in this building who has something to lose just as badly as I do." Rachel pulled out her phone and opened a document. "My ex-husband filed a lawsuit 3 days ago. He's claiming I'm mentally unstable and unfit to run this company. The board votes in 72 hours on whether to remove me as CEO." She swiped to another screen and held it out. Marcus saw legal documents, motions, depositions. "Derek Townsend is arguing that I have no life outside this office. No family, no stability. Just an obsession with a power that's warping my judgment. And he's not entirely wrong." Her voice cracked on the last word. I need to prove I have balance, a family, stability. And you? She looked at him with an expression that mixed desperation and calculation in equal measure. You're a single father working night shifts to provide for your daughter. You're devoted, reliable, exactly what I need people to see. Marcus's head was spinning. You want me to lie to your board of directors? I want you to play a role. For 6 weeks, you'll appear at board meetings, investor dinners, court proceedings as my husband. We'll create a backstory that explains how we met, why we married quickly, why no one knew about it. This is insane. This is survival. Rachel's mask slipped completely, and Marcus saw genuine terror underneath. Derek isn't just trying to take my company. He's trying to destroy me. He's been planning this for 3 years, planning stories with journalists, manipulating board members, hiring private investigators to dig up anything he can weaponize. This lawsuit is just the opening move. Why would he hate you that much? Because I chose the company over him, over our marriage. Because I discovered he was embezzling $8 million and I gave him a choice. Leave quietly with a generous settlement, or I'd go to the authorities. He took the money. But he's never forgiven me for it. Rachel pulled up another document, a contract. $50,000 up front, deposited within 24 hours. Another $150,000 when this is over in 6 weeks. Your daughter will attend Rosewood Academy, fully paid, $48,000 a year. You'll be promoted to Director of Facilities Management, $92,000 annual salary, starting immediately. Marcus stared at the numbers. $200,000. Emma in the best private school in Chicago. A salary that would let him fight Jennifer's custody claim and actually win. Or I call security right now and you're fired for policy violations. Your employment record shows termination for cause, and you get to explain to a judge why you lost your stable job. Your ex-wife's lawyer will have a field day with that, won't he? The threat hung in the air between them like poison gas. Marcus looked at Emma one more time, at her worn sneakers that were getting too small, at the jacket that was supposed to be his winter coat but spent most nights keeping her warm, at the future he couldn't give her on $18 an hour while paying Jennifer $900 a month in child support. If I do this, his voice came out rough, what exactly happens? My lawyer will brief you tomorrow. We'll create a detailed backstory, where we met, how we fell in love, why we married quickly. You'll sign a contract that makes everything legally binding. We'll get marriage certificates filed with the city, prenuptial agreement protecting my assets. You'll move into my penthouse on Lakeshore Drive with Emma, and you'll convince everyone who matters that we're genuinely happy together. For 6 weeks. That's all I need. Then you walk away with enough money to fight any custody battle and never worry about rent again. Marcus felt like he was standing at the edge of a cliff in the dark, with someone offering to pay him to jump without knowing what was at the bottom. Why me? Out of 1,800 employees, why choose the janitor you caught breaking company policy? Rachel's expression shifted into something almost like respect. Because you have exactly what I need. A daughter, a ready-made family, and most importantly, you have just as much to lose as I do. If this arrangement fails, I lose my company. You lose Emma. That kind of mutual assured destruction makes for reliable partners. Emma stirred on the couch, murmuring something in her sleep. Marcus watched her small hand reach out, searching for the comfort of his presence, even while dreaming. He thought about the letter from Jennifer's attorney that had arrived last week, about the part that said father's work schedule precludes adequate supervision and stable home environment, about the follow-up that said Jennifer was prepared to file for full custody with supervised visitation only. One more strike against him, and the judge might listen. Okay, the word came out before Marcus could stop it. I'll do it. Rachel's shoulders dropped slightly, relief flashing across her face before the mask snapped back into place. My driver will pick you up tomorrow at noon. Bring everything you own. We start immediately. She walked toward the door, then paused without turning around. And Marcus, if you tell anyone the truth about this arrangement, the deal is off and you're finished. My lawyers will bury you in litigation for breach of contract, and you'll lose everything anyway. Do you understand? I understand. After she left, Marcus stood in the empty conference room, the magnitude of what he'd just agreed to crashing over him like a wave. Emma woke up and rubbed her eyes. "Daddy, I had a dream about a castle." Marcus picked her up, feeling her small arms wrap around his neck. "Yeah, baby? We lived there, you and me and a pretty lady. Was that real?" Marcus's chest tightened. "Not yet, sweetheart, but maybe soon." "Is the lady nice?" He thought about the fear in Rachel's eyes, the desperation in her voice, the way her hands had shaken when she'd made her offer. "I don't know yet, but I think she's trying to be." The next morning, Marcus packed their entire lives into 3 suitcases and 2 cardboard boxes from the dumpster behind their building. It took less than an hour. The studio apartment in Logan Square had been temporary for 2 years now. Temporary because Marcus kept telling himself he'd find something better. Somewhere Emma could have her own room, somewhere the heat worked consistently and the neighbors didn't fight through the walls until 3 in the morning. Emma sat on the bed watching him, clutching the stuffed rabbit that Jennifer had given her 3 birthdays ago, back when Jennifer still pretended to care. "Are we going on a trip?" "Something like that." "For how long?" Marcus knelt down beside her, trying to find words that weren't exactly lies but weren't the truth either. "Remember how Daddy has to work really hard sometimes to take care of you?" Emma nodded solemnly. "Well, I'm going to do a special job for the next few weeks. We're going to stay with someone, a lady named Ms. Hartwell. And it's really important that you're on your best behavior, okay? We're going to pretend something for a little while." Emma's eyes narrowed. She was 6, but she was sharp. Too sharp sometimes. "Pretend what?" "That Ms. Hartwell and I are friends, really good friends, like how Mommy Jennifer has Richard now." "Boyfriend and girlfriend?" "Something like that. But it's just pretend, Emma, just for work. Just so Daddy can keep taking care of you the way you deserve. Can you do that for me?" Emma hugged her rabbit tighter, and Marcus saw the confusion and worry in her face that no 6-year-old should have to carry. "I guess, but I don't like lying." "I know, baby, me neither. But sometimes grown-ups have to do complicated things to keep the people they love safe. Do you trust Daddy?" "Always." "Then trust me now, okay?" At exactly noon, a black Mercedes S-Class pulled up outside their building. The driver was an older man in a suit, silver hair and kind eyes, who introduced himself simply as Vincent. "Mr. Webb, Miss Emma, let me help you with those bags." Vincent loaded their suitcases without comment, without judgment, without any indication that he found it strange that a CEO's new husband owned so few possessions. Emma pressed her face against the window as they drove through downtown Chicago, her eyes wide at buildings she'd only ever seen from a distance. "Daddy, look, that building is so tall." "That's where Ms. Hartwell works, baby. Where I used to work too, at night." "You worked in a castle?" Vincent smiled slightly in the rearview mirror. "It does look like one, doesn't it, Miss Emma?" Rachel's penthouse was on the 52nd floor of a glass and steel tower on Lakeshore Drive. The elevator opened directly into the apartment. No hallway, no shared space, just straight into a foyer that was bigger than their entire studio. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of Lake Michigan, stretching to the horizon. The living room featured furniture that looked like it belonged in a museum, art on the walls that Marcus vaguely recognized from Emma's library books about famous paintings, and a kitchen with appliances he didn't know how to operate. Emma gasped and grabbed Marcus's hand tighter. Rachel was waiting for them, dressed more casually than last night, designer jeans and a silk blouse that probably cost more than Marcus's monthly rent, but still intimidating in a way that made him feel like an imposter who'd be discovered any second. "Welcome, Emma, right?" Emma hid behind Marcus's leg. Rachel's expression softened almost imperceptibly, and she knelt down to Emma's eye level, her movements careful, like she was approaching a skittish animal. "I know this is scary. New places always are. But I promise you're safe here, and I think you're going to like your room." "I get my own room?" "You do. Would you like to see it?" Emma looked up at Marcus, seeking permission. He nodded. She took a tentative step forward, and Rachel stood, offering her hand with surprising gentleness. After a moment of hesitation, Emma took it. Marcus followed them down a hallway lined with photographs. Rachel at various company events, always alone, and always smiling that professional smile that didn't reach her eyes. Rachel pushed open a door at the end, and Emma's jaw dropped. The room was painted soft yellow with white trim. A canopy bed dominated one corner, covered in stuffed animals that still had their tags. Bookshelves lined an entire wall, filled with everything from picture books to middle-grade novels. There was a small desk with art supplies already arranged in neat containers, a window seat with cushions overlooking the city, and a toy box that was overflowing with dolls and games and puzzles. Is this really mine? For as long as you're here. Rachel's voice had lost its corporate edge. My assistant wasn't sure what you liked, so she got a variety of things. If there's something specific you want that's not here, just tell me. Emma walked slowly into the room, touching everything like she was afraid it might disappear. She picked up a stuffed bear from the bed, holding it carefully with both hands. Can I really keep this? Everything in this room is yours. Emma looked at the bear, then at Rachel, then suddenly ran forward and wrapped her arms around Rachel's legs in an impulsive hug that caught everyone off guard. Thank you. Rachel stood frozen for a moment, her hands hovering uncertainly before gently patting Emma's back with the awkwardness of someone who'd never comforted a child before. You're welcome, sweetheart. When Emma released her and started exploring the bookshelves with the rabbit tucked under one arm, Rachel caught Marcus's eye. Something vulnerable flashed across her face, surprise maybe or longing, before the professional mask returned. Marcus, my lawyer is waiting in my office. Emma, there are snacks in the kitchen if you're hungry. The housekeeper, Maria, will be here in 20 minutes. She has a granddaughter your age and brought some games to play. Rachel's home office was all glass and steel, designed to intimidate. A woman in her 50s with sharp gray eyes and hair pulled back in a severe bun sat at the desk, a stack of legal documents in front of her. She stood when they entered. Marcus Webb, I'm Patricia Morgan, Ms. Hartwell's attorney. She gestured to a chair. Sit. We have a lot to cover and not much time. For the next 3 hours, Patricia walked Marcus through every detail of the fabricated story with the precision of a general planning a military campaign. Marcus and Rachel had met 7 months ago at a charity gala for STEM education at the Art Institute of Chicago. Rachel had been giving a speech about closing the opportunity gap in tech careers. Marcus had been there volunteering as part of Hartwell Technology's Employee Community Service Program, helping with setup and breakdown. You talked during the cocktail hour about workforce development. Patricia read from her notes like she was describing real events. Rachel was impressed by your practical insights. You'd grown up without much money, worked your way through community college before financial constraints forced you to drop out. You understood the barriers that keep people trapped in low-wage work. She found that perspective valuable. Marcus's stomach twisted. I didn't actually grow up poor. My dad was a union welder. We were fine. You do now. The backstory establishes your credibility and explains why Rachel was attracted to you despite the difference in your circumstances. It also justifies your deep empathy and fierce devotion to Emma. Patricia continued with the timeline. Their first actual date was April 15th at a small Italian restaurant in Lincoln Park called Lucia's. Marcus ordered the carbonara. Rachel had the seafood risotto. They talked about Emma, about Rachel's work, about their respective childhoods. The connection was immediate and genuine. You saw each other weekly after that, always low-key, coffee shops, walks by the lake, quiet dinners. Rachel wanted to keep the relationship private because of company policy about relationships between executives and employees. You understood and respected that boundary. When did we supposedly get engaged? You didn't. You went to City Hall 3 weeks ago and got married. Spontaneous, romantic. You both knew what you wanted and saw no reason to wait. Very modern, very practical. Marcus tried to absorb the information. Dates, locations, conversations, emotions, like studying for an exam where failure meant losing everything. Patricia pulled out another document, this one thicker than the others. The marriage license is real, filed legally with Cook County, but you need to understand what that means. You are actually married to Rachel Hartwell. On paper, in the eyes of the law, you are her husband. This isn't a fake marriage, it's a marriage entered into under false pretenses, which is a different thing entirely. That seems extreme for a business dispute. Patricia and Rachel exchanged a glance that made Marcus's instincts prickle with warning. Derek Townsend isn't just suing for control of the company. Patricia's voice took on a careful quality, like she was choosing each word with precision. He's been systematically working to destroy Rachel's reputation for 3 years, planting stories in the media about her being cold, unstable, obsessed with work to an unhealthy degree, manipulating board members by suggesting she's unfit for leadership, hiring private investigators to dig up anything compromising from her past. Why does he hate her so much? Rachel's jaw tightened. She stared out the window for a long moment before speaking. Derek and I built Hartwell Technologies together. We were partners before we were married, both of us fresh out of MIT, both convinced we were going to change the world. For 5 years, it worked. We grew the company from a startup in my apartment to a major player in AI software. Revenue hit 100 million, then 200, then 500. Her voice went hollow. But success changed him. He started taking shortcuts, making deals that compromised our values. I found evidence he was embezzling, using shell corporations to siphon money from the company we'd built together. $8 million over 18 months. So you divorced him. I gave him a choice. Leave quietly with $50 million and sign away all claims to the company, or I'd go to the authorities with evidence of fraud and watch him go to prison. He took the money. Rachel turned to face Marcus directly. But he's never forgiven me for it. In his mind, I betrayed him, chose the company over our marriage, and now he wants me to lose everything the way he did. The lawsuit isn't about business, it's about revenge. That's why you're so scared. I'm scared because I don't know what else he has. Derek always has contingency plans, backup strategies, insurance policies. Whatever he reveals at that board meeting, it's going to be designed to cause maximum damage, and I need to be ready for it. Patricia pushed the contract across the desk, 23 pages of dense legal language. Read it carefully. Once you sign, you're bound by its terms. If you violate the confidentiality clause or attempt to extort additional money, Rachel can sue you for breach of contract, and you'll owe her $5 million in damages. Do you understand? Marcus read through the key sections. The payments were clearly outlined. $50,000 within 24 hours, $150,000 upon successful completion of the 6-week arrangement. Emma's tuition at Rosewood Academy would be paid in full for the academic year. Marcus's promotion to Director of Facilities Management would be effective immediately with a salary of $92,000 per year. There was also a prenuptial agreement, equally detailed, that made it clear Marcus had no claim to Rachel's fortune. If the marriage ended, and the contract specified it would end after 6 weeks unless both parties agreed to extend, Marcus would leave with exactly what was specified in the contract and nothing more. His hands shook slightly as he signed. This was real. He just legally married a woman he didn't know, agreed to lie to everyone, and bound himself to a situation he didn't fully understand. Patricia collected the papers efficiently, like she did this sort of thing every day. Good. Now let's discuss your public appearances. The board meeting is in 72 hours. Before that, you'll attend a small dinner party Rachel is hosting tomorrow night. 4 board members and their spouses. Consider it a dress rehearsal. Tomorrow, Marcus's voice cracked. I'm not ready. You'll be ready. We're drilling you on the backstory all day today. Maria will work with Emma on appropriate behavior for formal events. You'll both have new wardrobes delivered this afternoon. Rachel's stylist is coming at 4 to make you look like someone who belongs in her world. The rest of the day blurred together in an overwhelming rush of preparation. Patricia grilled Marcus on details until he could recite their entire fictional relationship without hesitation. The name of the waiter at Lucia's, the color of Rachel's dress on their first date, the exact words he'd supposedly said when proposing they get married at City Hall. A stylist named Marcus arrived around 4 with racks of expensive clothes, measuring Marcus with a tailor's eye and selecting outfits that transformed him from custodian to executive's husband. Suits from Tom Ford, casual wear from Ralph Lauren, shoes from Allen Edmonds. You have good bone structure. Marcus circled him critically. Strong jaw, nice eyes, decent posture, but you need a proper haircut. I'm calling Andre. Andre arrived an hour later, a Frenchman with an accent so thick Marcus could barely understand him, and transformed Marcus's shaggy hair into something styled and professional. When Marcus finally looked in the mirror, he barely recognized himself. The man staring back looked successful, polished, like someone who belonged in Rachel's world instead of cleaning it. Emma was having her own transformation. Maria, the housekeeper, had helped her pick out a dress for the dinner party and was teaching her formal dining etiquette in the dining room. When Marcus found them, Emma was carefully folding a napkin while Maria corrected her technique. Like this, mija, folded to the left of the plate. Why does it matter which side? Because details matter in formal settings. People notice these things. They make judgments about you based on small details. Emma saw Marcus and ran over, her face lighting up. Daddy, Maria is teaching me fancy stuff. Marcus picked her up, noting that she'd already been bathed and dressed in new clothes. A simple blue dress that somehow managed to look both age-appropriate and expensive. I see that. You're becoming very sophisticated. What's sophisticated mean? It means fancy and smart at the same time. Rachel appeared in the doorway and Marcus's breath caught. She changed into a simple black dress, her hair down around her shoulders instead of pulled back. She looked softer somehow, less like a CEO and more like a woman who might actually be someone's wife. The guests arrive at 7 tomorrow evening. Margaret Chen, Robert Hayes, Thomas Liu, and Barbara Winters. All board members, all skeptical of my ability to balance work and personal life. We need to convince them we're genuinely happy together. How do we do that? Marcus set Emma down gently. Small touches, hand-holding, inside jokes, comfortable silence. The kind of intimacy that can't be faked easily. Rachel paused. At least the kind that's very difficult to fake convincingly. That night, after Emma was asleep in her new room, having insisted on reading 3 books and testing every stuffed animal on the bed, Marcus stood in his own bedroom, staring at the California King mattress and wondering how his life had become so surreal in less than 24 hours. His phone buzzed with a text from Jennifer. Heard you moved. New address? Marcus's stomach dropped. How did she know already? He'd been planning to tell her himself to control the narrative, but someone must have seen the Mercedes or mentioned something to someone who knew someone. He typed back, yeah, got a better place. Good for Emma. Where? Marcus hesitated, then sent Rachel's address. There was no avoiding it. Jennifer had legal rights to know where their daughter was living. Her response came immediately. Lakeshore Drive? How the hell did you afford that? My situation changed. We'll talk about it when you visit. You better believe we will. I'm coming tomorrow afternoon. Marcus closed his eyes. Jennifer would arrive right before the dinner party. This was going to be a disaster. He found Rachel in her office, working despite the late hour, the glow from her laptop screen casting shadows across her face. Can't sleep either? She looked up, startled, then gestured to the chair across from her desk. Jennifer is coming tomorrow afternoon. She wants to see where Emma's living. Rachel set down her pen. That's actually good timing. How is that possibly good? Because the best way to convince Jennifer this is real is to let her see us together. See Emma happy. See the life we're supposedly building. Rachel leaned back in her chair. Your ex-wife left you because you couldn't provide the life she wanted, correct? Marcus's jaw tightened. She left because she met someone with more money and better prospects. Yeah. Then when she sees what you have now, she'll back off. She won't want the responsibility of full custody if you can provide better opportunities for Emma. It's simple game theory. You don't know Jennifer. She's competitive. She might fight harder just to prove she can. Then we make sure she can't win. Patricia's already drafting a custody modification proposal. We'll offer Jennifer reduced child support in exchange for you having primary custody. Frame it as giving her more freedom while ensuring Emma has the best possible life. What if she refuses? She won't, because fighting you now means going up against me, against my resources, my lawyers, my influence. Jennifer's smart enough to know when she's outmatched. Marcus wanted to argue, but Rachel was probably right. Jennifer had always been pragmatic, even about motherhood. There's something else. Rachel stood and walked around the desk. Tomorrow night during the dinner party, we need to act like a couple. That means physical affection, touching, casual intimacy. Are you comfortable with that? I don't have a choice, do I? There's always a choice, but some choices have consequences. She moved closer, close enough that Marcus could smell her perfume, something subtle and expensive. We should practice. Make it look natural when it matters. She took his hand, her skin cool and smooth, and guided his arm around her waist. Then she stepped into his space until they were close enough that he could feel the warmth radiating from her body. Like this, comfortable, natural, like we've done it 1,000 times before. Marcus's heart was racing, and he knew she could probably feel it through the thin fabric of her dress. This feels anything but natural. It will, eventually. But her voice wavered slightly, and Marcus realized she was just as nervous as he was. They stood like that for a moment, neither quite sure what to do next. The silence stretching between them, loaded with awkwardness and something else Marcus couldn't identify. Then Rachel stepped back, breaking the contact. Tomorrow will be challenging. Jennifer in the afternoon, then the dinner party. But if we get through it, the board meeting will be easier. And if we don't, then Derek wins. Then Derek wins. I lose the company, you lose Emma, and both our lives fall apart. The weight of that reality settled between them like a third presence in the room. Jennifer arrived the next afternoon in her BMW, technically Richard's BM, but she drove it like it was hers, wearing designer clothes that were calculated to intimidate. She stepped out of the car and stopped in the circular driveway, looking up at the glass and steel tower with calculating eyes that Marcus recognized from their marriage. She was already cataloging everything, already planning her attack strategy. Vincent met her in the lobby and brought her up. When the elevator doors opened directly into the penthouse, Jennifer's jaw actually dropped. For once, her carefully maintained composure cracked. Jesus Christ, Marcus. Marcus and Rachel were waiting in the living room, positioned carefully, close enough to suggest intimacy, far enough to seem natural. Sophie was at a play date with Maria's granddaughter, giving the adults time to navigate this minefield without an audience. Rachel stood smoothly, extending her hand with perfect grace. Jennifer, I'm Rachel Hartwell. It's lovely to finally meet you. Jennifer shook her hand automatically, but her eyes were cold as she assessed Rachel from head to toe. Rachel Hartwell, the Rachel Hartwell, CEO of Hartwell Technologies. That's right, and you're Marcus's ex-wife. I am. Jennifer walked further into the room, her designer heels clicking on the hardwood, taking in every detail with the precision of an appraiser. The furniture that cost more than a car, the art on the walls, the view that stretched across the entire city. She picked up a framed photo from the side table, one that Patricia had staged, showing Marcus, Rachel, and Emma at the lakefront, all smiling like a real family. This is quite the upgrade from that studio apartment in Logan Square. We've been fortunate. Marcus kept his voice neutral. Jennifer laughed without humor. Fortunate? 6 months ago you were begging me to reduce child support because you could barely make rent. Now you're living here, married to a billionaire. What changed, Marcus? I met Rachel. My circumstances improved. Just like that, you meet a CEO at some charity event and suddenly you're living in a penthouse. Jennifer set down the photo with deliberate care. You must think I'm an idiot. Rachel stepped forward, her voice calm but firm with an edge of steel underneath. Jennifer, I understand your skepticism. The circumstances are unusual, but Marcus and I connected over shared values about education and opportunity. I saw qualities in him that impressed me. His work ethic, his devotion to Emma, his integrity. Those things matter more to me than background or wealth. How convenient for him. Yes, it is convenient. He found someone who appreciates him for who he is rather than what he has. I believe that was something lacking in your marriage. Jennifer's face flushed red. You don't know anything about our marriage. I know you left when times got hard. I know you fought for custody primarily to maintain child support payments rather than out of genuine desire to parent full-time. I know Emma mentions you visiting only once a month, despite living 20 minutes away. I'm busy. I have a life. So do we, but we make Emma our priority. Rachel moved closer to Marcus, taking his hand in a gesture that looked practiced but felt surprisingly natural. Which is why we're proposing a modification to the custody arrangement. Marcus will have primary custody. You'll have standard visitation to Mambestamehim, Nantimatanashin, 2 weekends per month and alternating holidays. In exchange, child support will be reduced to $500 per month. Jennifer stared. You're trying to take my daughter. We're trying to give Emma stability. She's thriving here. New school, consistent routine, two parents who are present every day. You know this is better for her. Two parents, Jennifer's voice rose. You've known her for what, 3 weeks? And you think you're her parent? I think I'm someone who's here every day, reading to her at night, helping with homework, making sure she's safe and loved. Can you say the same? The room went silent. Jennifer's hands clenched into fists at her sides, and Marcus could see her calculating, weighing her options, trying to find an angle. I'm not agreeing to anything without talking to my lawyer. Of course, Rachel's voice smoothed back into professional courtesy. Have him contact Patricia Morgan. We can work out the details. After Jennifer left, slamming the door behind her hard enough to rattle the frame, Marcus exhaled heavily. That went worse than I expected. It went exactly as expected. She's angry because she knows we're right. Her lawyer will convince her to accept the deal within the week. Rachel checked her watch, the gesture so practiced it seemed automatic. The guests arrive in 3 hours. We need to prepare. The dinner party was excruciating from the first moment. Margaret Chen arrived first with her husband David, a quiet literature professor who seemed uncomfortable in formal settings. Margaret hugged Rachel warmly, which surprised Marcus. He hadn't expected the CFO to show genuine affection. It's so good to see you outside the office, Rachel. And you must be Marcus. Margaret's handshake was firm and assessing. I've heard so much about you. Marcus caught Rachel's eye, wondering what exactly she'd told her board members about their fictional relationship. All good things, I hope. Very good things. Rachel says you have excellent practical sense and keep her grounded. Robert Hayes and his wife Linda came next, followed by Thomas Liu with his husband Peter, and finally Barbara Winters alone, recently divorced, according to Rachel's briefing, and bitter about it. They gathered in the living room for cocktails. Maria served appetizers while Emma, on her absolute best behavior in her blue dress, offered people napkins with the careful concentration of someone who'd been coached extensively. She's precious. Linda accepted a napkin with a warm smile. How old? 6, Marcus answered. Just started first grade at Rosewood Academy. Excellent school. Our grandson attends there. Maybe they'll be classmates. The conversation flowed easily enough through drinks, but Marcus felt the scrutiny. Every touch between him and Rachel was analyzed, every glance evaluated. When Rachel's hand rested naturally on his shoulder while she was telling a story about the company's early days, Margaret watched. When Marcus laughed at something Rachel said about a disastrous investor pitch, Robert studied his face for signs of performance. They moved to the dining room for dinner. Rachel had arranged the seating strategically, Marcus on her right, Margaret on her left, creating a buffer of friendly faces. Emma sat between Marcus and Linda, who seemed genuinely delighted to have a child at the table. During the first course, some kind of soup that Marcus couldn't identify but pretended to enjoy, Barbara spoke up from across the table. So, Marcus, this all happened rather quickly. You and Rachel. When you know, Marcus echoed the line Patricia had drilled into him. How romantic. Barbara's smile didn't reach her eyes, though I imagine the difference in your backgrounds created some challenges. Barbara, Margaret's voice carried a warning. I'm just curious. It is unusual for someone in Rachel's position to marry. Barbara paused deliberately. Someone from such a different world. What did you do before your recent promotion, Marcus? The table went quiet. Marcus felt everyone's eyes on him, and he knew this was a test. Patricia had warned him Barbara would attack, that she'd try to make him feel ashamed, try to get him to react defensively. He set down his soup spoon with deliberate care and looked Barbara directly in the eyes. I was a custodian, Mrs. Winters. I cleaned in this building and every floor in it for 4 years, night shift, $18 an hour. Barbara's eyebrows rose. How egalitarian of you, Rachel. Marcus's position didn't define him. Rachel's voice was calm, but Marcus heard the anger underneath. His character did. I saw how hard he worked, how dedicated he was to his daughter, how much he understood about the systems that keep people trapped in low-wage work despite having skills and intelligence. Still, quite the Cinderella story. Or would it be Cinderfella? Barbara sipped her wine. I'm sure Derek will find it fascinating when it comes up at the board meeting. The temperature in the room dropped several degrees. Derek's opinion is irrelevant. Rachel's tone could have cut glass. Is it? He's making some rather interesting claims in his lawsuit about your mental state, your obsession with work. Now suddenly you're married with a ready-made family. Some might say the timing is suspicious. Some might say Derek is a bitter ex-husband who can't accept that Rachel moved on and built a life without him. Margaret interjected sharply. Barbara, this is neither the time nor the place. I'm just saying what everyone's thinking. You're saying what you're thinking. And Thomas Liu spoke up for the first time, his voice quiet but firm. Not everyone shares your skepticism. I've known Rachel for 8 years. I've never seen her happier than these past few weeks. That's not performance. That's genuine. Rachel squeezed Marcus's hand under the table, a gesture of gratitude that no one else could see. Marcus cleared his throat, knowing this was the moment that would either sell the story or destroy it. Mrs. Winters, I understand your doubt. If I were in your position, I'd probably feel the same way. A custodian and a CEO sounds like a bad romantic comedy, not a real relationship. He looked at Rachel, and for a moment he forgot they were performing, forgot that 6 people were watching and judging. But let me tell you what I saw that other people didn't. I saw Rachel stay at the office until 2 in the morning, 3 nights a week. Not because she was obsessed with power, but because she was personally reviewing every employee benefit package to make sure people had good health care. I saw her reject a merger deal worth $100 million because it would have meant laying off 200 workers. I saw someone who carried the weight of 1,800 families on her shoulders and refused to let anyone help her because she didn't trust anyone not to let her down. His voice softened. I don't come from her world. I grew up in a 2-bedroom house in Cicero with a dad who welded for 40 years and a mom who cleaned houses. I dropped out of a community college because I couldn't afford books and tuition at the same time. I've spent most of my adult life being invisible to people like you, the ones who walk past custodians like we're furniture. Barbara had the grace to look uncomfortable, but Rachel saw me. She asked my name. She asked about my daughter. She treated me like a person instead of a service. And when we started talking, really talking, not just polite greetings, I realized she was just as invisible as I was. Nobody saw past the CEO title to the woman who was lonely and scared and carrying more weight than anyone should carry alone. Marcus reached for Rachel's hand on top of the table this time, making the gesture public. We got married fast because we're both old enough to know what we want and practical enough not to waste time. I'm 34 with a daughter to raise. Rachel's 38 running a major company. Neither of us has time for long courtships and elaborate weddings. We saw something in each other that we needed, and we took the chance. He looked around the table, meeting each person's eyes. So yes, the timing looks convenient. Yes, the circumstances are unusual. But I love my wife. Not for her money. I signed a prenup that makes it clear I have no claim to any of that. I love her because she makes my daughter smile, because she reads bedtime stories even when she's exhausted, because she fights for what she believes in even when it costs her everything. And if you think that's suspicious, that's your problem, not ours. The table was completely silent. Then Margaret started clapping, slow and deliberate, and the others joined in. Even Barbara, though her applause was reluctant. Well said, Marcus. Margaret raised her wine glass. To Rachel and Marcus. May your partnership be as successful as your love clearly is. The rest of the dinner passed more smoothly, the tension broken by Marcus's speech. By the time dessert arrived, even Barbara was making polite conversation about her own divorce and the challenges of starting over at 50. Emma fell asleep on the couch during coffee, and Marcus carried her to bed. When he returned, the guests were saying their goodbyes, offering congratulations and support. Margaret pulled Rachel aside near the elevator. Don't let Barbara get to you. She's projecting her own failed marriage onto everyone else. The rest of us see what's really happening here. What's really happening? Rachel asked carefully. You're letting someone in, building a life outside these office walls. That takes real courage, Rachel. Derek's lawsuit is going to fail. The board sees through him. After everyone left, Rachel and Marcus collapsed onto the couch in the living room, both mentally exhausted from the performance. I think that went well. Rachel kicked off her heels with a sigh of relief. Barbara hates us. Barbara hates everyone. Her vote was never in question. But Margaret, Thomas, and Robert are firmly on our side now. That's what matters. Marcus looked at her. You were incredible tonight. Natural. Like we really have been married for months. So were you. That speech, Rachel's voice caught. Some of that felt very real. Something passed between them, unspoken but significant. Marcus realized with a jolt that he'd meant every word of that speech, even though it had started as performance. Maybe we're better at this than we thought. Rachel met his eyes. Maybe we are. The moment stretched between them, loaded with possibility, until Rachel's phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen and her face went pale. Tricia. She wouldn't call this late unless something's wrong. She answered, putting it on speaker. Rachel, Derek just hired a private investigation firm, Whitmore Associates. They're the best and most ruthless in Chicago. They're already digging into Marcus's background, interviewing Jennifer, pulling financial records. Derek's moving faster than we anticipated. Rachel's hand tightened on the phone. What do we do? Be ready. The board meeting is in 48 hours, and Derek's going to come at you with everything he has. Make sure your story is airtight. Make sure Marcus is prepared for aggressive questioning. And for God's sake, don't give them any reason to doubt that this marriage is real. After the call ended, Rachel sat in silence for a long moment. When she finally spoke, her voice was small in a way Marcus hadn't heard before. I'm scared, Marcus. Scared of what Derek's found. Scared of what he'll reveal at that meeting. Scared that I've dragged you and Emma into something that's going to destroy all of us. Marcus moved closer on the couch, close enough that their shoulders touched. Then we face it together. No more pretending, at least not with each other. Whatever Derek throws at us, we deal with it as partners. Understood? Rachel nodded, and for the first time since this had all started, Marcus saw something in her expression that looked like trust. Outside the windows, Chicago glittered in the darkness, unaware that inside one penthouse, two strangers were discovering that sometimes the most complicated lies contain seeds of unexpected truth. The board meeting was set for Tuesday at 9 in the morning, which gave Marcus and Rachel exactly 48 hours to prepare for Derek's attack. Patricia arrived at the penthouse Monday morning with 3 assistants carrying boxes of documents, depositions, and what she called defensive materials. Derek will come at you hard. He spent 3 years planning this, which means he has evidence we haven't seen yet. Our strategy is simple. Acknowledge the unusual circumstances of your marriage while demonstrating that Rachel's personal life has made her a better CEO, not a compromised one. Marcus sat at the dining table reviewing the fabricated timeline again while Patricia drilled Rachel on potential questions. Emma was at school, her 3rd day at Rosewood, where according to Maria she'd already made 2 friends and impressed her teacher with her reading level. When Derek brings up the money transfer, what do you say? Patricia pointed at Rachel. That it was a wedding gift to help Marcus resolve a custody dispute with his ex-wife. Personal funds, not company money. Completely legal. When he questions the timeline, we fell in love quickly but deliberately. Neither of us had time for prolonged courtship. We knew what we wanted. When he calls it a sham marriage designed to manipulate the board? Rachel hesitated. Patricia leaned forward. Rachel, what do you say? That our marriage is real in every way that matters. That Marcus and Emma have brought balance to my life. That the board can judge me on my results, not my personal choices. Patricia nodded, satisfied, then turned to Marcus. Derek will try to rattle you. Make you feel small, out of place, like you're a con artist who got caught. How do you respond? Marcus thought about Barbara's attacks at dinner, about every time in his life someone had looked down on him for working with his hands instead of a degree. I tell the truth, that I married Rachel because I saw something in her that no one else seemed to see. That I'm not ashamed of where I come from or what I do. That loving someone across different backgrounds isn't a crime, it's just harder. Good, authentic, use that. Patricia checked her watch. The meeting is in 26 hours. Get some rest tonight, both of you. After Patricia left, Marcus found Rachel on the balcony overlooking the lake. The October wind was sharp, carrying the smell of autumn and cold water. She was wearing jeans and a sweater, the first time he'd seen her in anything truly casual, and staring at the horizon like it held answers. "You should come inside, it's freezing out here." "I like the cold. It keeps me sharp." Marcus joined her at the railing, maintaining a careful distance. "Patricia thinks we're ready." Patricia's paid to think that. Reality is different. Rachel wrapped her arms around herself. "Derek knows something. I can feel it. He's too confident, too quiet. He's waiting to drop something that will destroy me. Then we deal with it when it comes, together." Rachel turned to face him, wind whipping her hair around her face. "Why are you being so calm about this? You barely know me. This isn't your fight." "It became my fight the moment you made that offer. And maybe—" Marcus stopped, unsure if he should continue. "Maybe what?" "Maybe I'm tired of running from hard things. Jennifer left and I accepted that. My dad died and I didn't grieve properly because I had to keep working. Emma's asthma got worse and I couldn't afford better treatment. Every time life hit me, I just took it and kept going. But this feels like something worth fighting for." Rachel's expression shifted into something softer, more vulnerable. "You barely know what you're fighting for." "I know enough. I know you work yourself to exhaustion because you feel responsible for 1,800 families. I know you read to Emma every night even though no one asked you to. I know you're terrified of being alone, but even more terrified of letting people close enough to hurt you." Rachel's breath caught. "You see too much. Or maybe you've been invisible for too long, just like me." The moment hung between them, charged with something neither could name. Then Rachel's phone shattered the silence with an urgent buzz. She looked at the screen and her face drained of color. "It's from an unknown number, no message, just a photo." She held the phone out. The image showed Rachel and Derek from years ago, both younger, both smiling at some company celebration. But someone had written on the physical photo in red ink before photographing it, "I know everything. Soon everyone else will too." Marcus felt his stomach drop. "What does that mean?" "I don't know, but whatever Derek's planning, it's about to start." Tuesday morning arrived too fast. Marcus woke at 5, unable to sleep, and found Rachel already in the kitchen, making coffee with hands that trembled slightly. She wore a charcoal suit that probably cost more than Marcus's old car, her hair pulled back in that severe style that made her look untouchable. "You look terrifying." Marcus accepted the coffee mug she offered. "That's the idea. Armor for battle." Emma wandered in, rubbing her eyes, and Rachel's expression immediately softened. She poured orange juice and made toast without being asked, having learned Emma's breakfast preferences through careful observation. "Do you have to go to work today?" "Yes, sweetheart, but Maria will take you to school and pick you up. And tonight we'll do something special, okay? Whatever you want." "Can we make cookies?" "Absolutely." "Chocolate chip?" Emma nodded enthusiastically, and Rachel managed a genuine smile despite the tension radiating from her shoulders. Vincent drove them to Hartwell Technologies through morning traffic that seemed heavier than usual. Marcus wore one of his new suits, navy Tom Ford, white shirt, no tie as Patricia had instructed. "Confident, but not trying too hard," she'd said. The executive floor was already filling with board members when they arrived. Margaret offered an encouraging smile. Thomas gave Marcus a subtle thumbs up. Robert looked stern but not hostile. Barbara's expression was unreadable. And at the far end of the room, flanked by 2 lawyers in expensive suits, stood Derek Townsend. He was shorter than Marcus expected, maybe 5'9", with the kind of polished appearance that came from money and careful maintenance. Sandy hair, expensive watch, smile that didn't reach his eyes. When he spotted Marcus, that smile widened into something predatory. "So this is really happening. The janitor playing Prince." "That's enough," Margaret's voice cracked like a whip. "Derek, you're here as a courtesy because you're a significant shareholder. Show some respect or leave." Derek held up his hands in mock surrender, but his eyes never left Marcus, assessing, calculating, searching for weakness. The meeting was called to order at 9 sharp. Robert Hayes, the board chair, opened with formalities before turning the floor over to Derek. "You all know why we're here. 3 weeks ago, I filed suit requesting this board remove Rachel Hartwell as CEO on grounds of mental instability and compromised judgment. I'd like to present evidence supporting that claim. Derek's presentation was devastating in its thoroughness. He had bank records showing the $50,000 transfer to Marcus the day after they supposedly got married. Security footage from the night Rachel found Marcus with Emma, time-stamped and date-stamped, showing clearly that it was the first time Rachel and Marcus had interacted. Phone records proving they'd never communicated before that night. Employment records showing Marcus's promotion came exactly 24 hours after the marriage was registered. This isn't a love story. It's a desperate woman buying herself a family to avoid facing the truth. Rachel Hartwell is incapable of genuine human connection. She's obsessed with control to a degree that's unhealthy. She works 90-plus hours a week, sends emails at 3 in the morning, and hasn't taken a vacation longer than 3 days in 8 years. When I filed this lawsuit, she didn't seek therapy or take time off or address the underlying issues. She hired an actor. Derek turned to face Marcus directly. "Mr. Webb, how much is Rachel paying you to pretend to be her husband?" Patricia stood before Marcus could respond. "Mr. Townsend, you're out of line. The financial arrangements between Marcus and Rachel are private marital matters." "Are they? Because it looks a lot like employment compensation to me. $50,000 up front, another $150,000 promised. That's not a wedding gift. That's a contract." The board members shifted uncomfortably. Even Margaret looked troubled. Derek pressed his advantage, pulling up more documents on the screen. "Rachel has spent her entire adult life sacrificing personal relationships for professional success. Our marriage failed because she cared more about quarterly earnings than her own husband. Now, facing consequences for that choice, she's manufactured a family from thin air. This isn't balance, it's theater." Robert turned to Rachel. "Do you have a response?" Rachel stood slowly. Marcus could see her hands shaking despite her controlled expression. When she spoke, her voice was steady, but he heard the fear underneath. "Everything Derek showed you is technically accurate. I did transfer money to Marcus. We did meet under unusual circumstances. Our marriage did happen quickly." Barbara leaned back in her chair with a satisfied expression. "But his interpretation is completely wrong." Rachel walked to stand beside Marcus's chair, and he stood to join her, a united front. "I met Marcus 7 months ago at that charity gala, exactly as we've said, but I didn't really see him until 3 weeks ago. That night in this building, I found someone working himself to exhaustion to provide for his daughter. Someone who understood sacrifice and responsibility in ways I'd forgotten. I realized I wanted that kind of devotion in my life." She looked at Marcus, and something passed between them that felt entirely real. "Not because I needed to fool this board, because I needed to remember what it felt like to care about something besides profit margins and market share. Marcus didn't just agree to marry me. He forced me to confront truths about myself, I'd been avoiding for years." Derek laughed coldly. "Touching, but the timeline doesn't lie. You met him, caught him violating company policy, and within 24 hours had him sign papers making him your husband. That's not romance. That's leverage." The conference room door opened, and Patricia walked in with someone Marcus didn't recognize. A small woman in her 60s with gray hair and kind eyes. "I'd like to introduce Dr. Helen Park, licensed family therapist. She's been working with Rachel, Marcus, and Emma for the past 2 weeks, observing their interactions and assessing their family dynamics." Marcus blinked. This was news to him. He glanced at Rachel, who looked equally surprised. Patricia continued, "Dr. Park, would you share your findings?" Dr. Park moved to the front of the room with calm authority. "I've conducted 6 sessions with this family, both as a group and individually. I've observed them in their home environment, watched Rachel and Emma interact during bedtime routines, interviewed Emma's teachers at Rosewood Academy, and spoken with household staff." She pulled out a folder. "My professional assessment is that this is a genuine family unit. Emma calls Rachel mom spontaneously, not because she was coached. Rachel has adjusted her work schedule significantly. She now leaves the office by 6 most evenings to have dinner with Marcus and Emma. Marcus and Rachel show all the hallmarks of a couple building a real partnership. Disagreements handled with respect, division of parental responsibilities, genuine affection in unguarded moments." Derek stood abruptly. "She's been paid to say this. This is manufactured evidence. I'm a court-appointed family therapist, Mr. Townsend. I work in custody cases. My reputation depends on honest assessments. Dr. Park's voice was steel-wrapped in velvet. And frankly, I've seen enough fake families to spot one. This isn't that. Margaret spoke up. I've also noticed changes in Rachel. She smiles in meetings now. She asked me about my grandson's soccer game, something she's never done in 8 years. Small things, but meaningful. Thomas nodded. I agree. Rachel's been more focused, not less. Revenue is up 12% this quarter. Employee satisfaction scores hit an all-time high. Whatever's happening in her personal life, it's making her a better CEO, not a worse one. The momentum was shifting. Marcus could see Derek realizing he was losing control of the narrative. Then Derek played his final card. Since we're talking about honesty, let's talk about something Rachel has been hiding for 8 years. Something that proves exactly how far she'll go to protect her interests, regardless of ethics or law. He pulled up a new document on the screen. Marcus saw Rachel's face go white. March 17th, 2017. Sarah Hartwell, Rachel's younger sister, was driving drunk on Lakeshore Drive at 2 in the morning. She struck and killed a 19-year-old college student named David Morales. Hit and run. David died at the scene. The room went deadly silent. Sarah called Rachel for help, and Rachel, instead of calling the police, instead of ensuring justice for that young man, paid the Morales family $2.5 million to keep quiet. She used her money and influence to make the whole thing disappear. Sarah never faced charges, never spent a day in jail. The family got paid off, and David Morales was buried without justice. Derek turned to the board with triumph in his eyes. This is who you have running your company. Someone who thinks money can solve anything, who believes she's above the law, who will sacrifice anything and anyone to protect her interests. You think this marriage is real? It's the same pattern. Rachel found a problem and threw money at it until it went away. Marcus felt the room spinning. He looked at Rachel, whose face had gone completely blank, shut down in the way prey animals go still when cornered. Robert's voice was grave. Rachel, is this true? Rachel's lips moved, but no sound came out at first. Then barely audible. Yes. The board erupted in shocked murmurs. Barbara looked vindicated. Even Margaret seemed shaken. I have documentation if anyone doubts me. Derek pulled out more papers. Bank transfers, settlement agreements, police reports that were mysteriously closed, all of it pointing to Rachel Hartwell obstructing justice to protect her sister. Marcus stood up before he'd consciously decided to move. Every eye in the room swung to him. Mr. Townsend, you said David Morales was 19 years old when he died? Derek looked annoyed at the interruption. Yes, a sophomore at UIC, had his whole life ahead of him. And you're using his death as a weapon in a corporate power play. You're standing here exploiting a family's tragedy to win a board vote. Does that seem right to you? I'm exposing the truth. No, you're using a dead kid as ammunition. Marcus's voice hardened. You don't care about David Morales or justice for his family. You care about hurting Rachel, and that's disgusting. I'm not the one who covered up a crime. Neither am I, but I know something about making desperate choices to protect the people you love. Marcus turned to address the full board. 8 years ago, Rachel was faced with an impossible situation. Her sister, probably the only family she had left, called her in the middle of the night, terrified and guilty, and facing prison. Rachel made a choice, not a legal choice, not an ethical choice by any standard measure, but a human choice. He looked at Rachel, whose eyes were bright with unshed tears. She gave the Morales family money that couldn't possibly compensate for their loss, but maybe help them stay afloat financially. She made sure her sister got treatment for alcoholism and mental health issues. She's carried the weight of that choice for 8 years, and I guarantee it's eaten at her every single day. Marcus faced Derek directly. You want to judge her for that? Fine, but don't pretend you're doing it for noble reasons. You're doing it because a woman you once loved chose something else over you, and you've spent 3 years plotting revenge. That's not justice, that's spite. The room was silent. Then Margaret spoke, her voice thoughtful. Derek, did you know about this incident when it happened? Derek hesitated just long enough to be telling. I was Rachel's husband at the time, so yes. And did you report it to authorities? I, that's not the point. Actually, it is precisely the point. Margaret's eyes narrowed. You knew about this alleged crime for 8 years. You did nothing. But the moment Rachel files for divorce and pushes you out of the company, suddenly you're concerned about justice? That's convenient. Thomas jumped in. And correct me if I'm wrong, but obstruction of justice has a 3-year statute of limitations in Illinois, which means even if everything you say is true, it's no longer prosecutable. You're dredging up old pain to embarrass Rachel, not to serve any legal or ethical purpose. Derek's confident expression was cracking. She still did it. She still covered up a death. A death that happened 8 years ago, that you knew about and said nothing about until it served your agenda. Robert's voice was cold. Derek, this board is not a court of law. We're here to determine if Rachel Hartwell is fit to lead this company. And frankly, everything I've seen today suggests you're far more interested in vengeance than governance. Robert looked around the table. I move to dismiss Derek Townsend's lawsuit and affirm Rachel Hartwell as CEO of Hartwell Technologies. All in favor? 10 hands went up immediately. Barbara hesitated, then slowly raised hers as well. The motion carries. Derek, this meeting is concluded. Please leave. Derek's face flushed red with rage. He gathered his papers with shaking hands, his lawyers already heading for the door. This isn't over. You think you've won, but I have more, so much more. Rachel knows what I'm talking about. He stopped by Marcus and Rachel on his way out, leaning in close enough that only they could hear. Enjoy your little fantasy while it lasts. I wonder how your husband will feel when he learns all your secrets, not just the ones you've admitted to. Then he was gone, leaving behind a room full of shaken board members and one CEO who looked like she might collapse at any moment. After the others filed out, offering congratulations that felt hollow given what had been revealed, Patricia pulled Rachel and Marcus into a smaller conference room. That went better than expected, all things considered. Better? Rachel's voice was hoarse. Derek just exposed the worst thing I've ever done in front of my entire board. And they still voted for you because ultimately, board members care about results in leadership, not decade-old moral compromises. Patricia paused. But we need to talk about Derek's threat. He implied there's more. Rachel sank into a chair. I don't know what he's talking about. The Sarah situation is the only truly damaging secret I have. Then he's bluffing, trying to keep you scared. Patricia didn't sound convinced. Or he's found something else and is saving it for maximum impact. Marcus crouched beside Rachel's chair. Hey, look at me. Rachel raised her eyes and he saw exhaustion and shame written across her features. What you did 8 years ago, I'm not going to pretend it was right, but I understand it. That's what Derek doesn't get. You loved your sister enough to destroy a piece of yourself to save her. That's not sociopathy. That's family. The Morales family lost their son. Rachel's voice broke. They lost him, and I helped make sure no one was held accountable. How do I live with that? I don't know, but you don't have to figure it out alone anymore. Rachel leaned forward, her forehead resting against Marcus's shoulder, and he felt her entire body shaking with silent tears. Patricia quietly left the room, giving them privacy. They stayed like that for a long time, Marcus kneeling on expensive carpet, Rachel finally allowing herself to break, both of them trapped in a fake marriage that was feeling more real by the hour. When they finally made it back to the penthouse that evening, Emma ran to greet them with enthusiasm that felt like medicine after the toxicity of the board meeting. Mom, Dad, can we make cookies now? Rachel looked at Marcus with swollen eyes, and he could see her trying to pull herself together to be present for this child who'd somehow become theirs. Absolutely. Chocolate chip, right? Let me change first. While Rachel was upstairs, Marcus helped Emma set out ingredients in the kitchen. She chattered about her day at school, her new friend Sophie, who liked the same books, her teacher, who said Emma was advanced in reading, the boy named Tyler, who ate paste and made everyone laugh. Normal kid problems, normal kid joys, the kind of childhood Marcus had been terrified he couldn't provide, and that was now possible because of a bargain made in desperation. Rachel returned wearing jeans and a simple t-shirt, her hair down, looking more like a regular mom than a CEO. She washed her hands and started measuring flour while Emma cracked eggs with intense concentration. Do you have to break the shell on the side of the bowl? That's one way. Or you can tap it gently on the counter and use both hands to open it, like this. Rachel demonstrated and Emma mimicked her movements with the focus of someone learning a crucial life skill. Marcus watched them together, Rachel patient and gentle in a way that seemed as natural as breathing, Emma soaking up the attention like someone starved for it. This was supposed to be fake, a performance lasting 6 weeks. But there was nothing fake about the way Rachel smiled when Emma got the egg into the bowl without any shell, or the way Emma leaned against Rachel's side like she'd been doing it her whole life. Marcus, can you get the chocolate chips from the pantry? He handed them over and Rachel let Emma pour them into the batter, not flinching when half the bag ended up on the counter instead. Oops, I spilled. That's okay. We'll scoop them up and add them anyway. A few extra chocolate chips never hurt anyone. They worked together, the three of them, mixing and scooping dough onto baking sheets. When the first batch went into the oven, Emma sat at the counter watching through the glass like the cookies were the most fascinating thing she'd ever seen. Why do they spread out when they cook? The butter melts and the dough relaxes, kind of like how people relax when they feel safe and warm. Rachel set the timer. The heat changes them from one thing into something different. But still good? Sometimes even better. Emma nodded seriously, accepting this wisdom, while Marcus wondered if they were still talking about cookies. Later, after Emma was in bed with a glass of milk and 2 warm cookies, Marcus found Rachel on the balcony again. She was holding a glass of wine and staring at the lake, which was choppy with whitecaps under the evening wind. You should come inside. You'll freeze. I needed air, needed to think. Marcus joined her, bringing his own glass. They stood in silence for a while, watching boats dot the water with lights. I need to tell you something. Rachel's voice was barely audible over the wind. About what Derek said, about there being more secrets. You don't owe me explanations. Yes, I do, because you defended me today without knowing the whole truth, and you deserve better than that. She took a long drink of wine, gathering courage. Sarah wasn't just drunk that night. She was high on cocaine. I knew that when I paid off the Morales family. I knew she was struggling with addiction and I'd been enabling it, giving her money, making excuses, cleaning up her messes. David Morales died because my sister was high and drunk and reckless, and I'd done nothing to stop her. Rachel's hands gripped the railing so hard her knuckles went white. After the accident, I got her into the best rehab facility in the country. 30 days inpatient, then 6 months outpatient, then 2 years of therapy. She's been sober ever since, but that doesn't bring David back. Doesn't give his family their son. I bought my sister's freedom and my own peace of mind with blood money. Where is Sarah now? Boston. She teaches middle school English. Married to a good man who doesn't know about the accident. She calls me once a month to say thank you, and I can hear the guilt eating her alive through the phone, the same way it eats at me. Marcus processed this, trying to sort through the complicated ethics of desperate choices. Do you regret what you did? Every day, but I can't say I wouldn't do it again. That's what terrifies me. If I had to choose between Sarah going to prison and paying that family, I'd make the same choice. What does that make me? Human, flawed, loyal to the point of self-destruction. Marcus turned to look at her directly. Also maybe someone who should talk to the Morales family. Not legally, Patricia would have a stroke, but as a person, to apologize, to acknowledge what your money couldn't fix. Rachel's eyes widened. They'd never agree to meet me. Maybe not, but you could try. You could at least try to give them something real instead of just money. She seemed to consider this, emotions playing across her face too quickly to identify. Derek was right about one thing. I do throw money at problems until they disappear. I did it with Sarah. I'm doing it with you. It's the only tool I've ever trusted. Then maybe it's time to trust something else. Marcus reached over and took her hand. You trusted me to defend you today without scripting what I'd say. That worked out okay. Rachel's fingers tightened around his. Why are you being so kind to me? After everything you learned today, you should be disgusted. I learned that you made a terrible choice to protect someone you loved. I learned that you've been carrying guilt for 8 years without telling anyone. I learned that you're human and scared and trying your best, same as everyone else. He stepped closer. And I learned that when Emma asked you about cookies, you didn't brush her off or hand her to Maria. You stopped everything and made them with her. That tells me more about who you are than anything Derek revealed. The wind picked up, making both of them shiver, but neither moved toward the door. Marcus, this arrangement, we said 6 weeks, but I'm starting to want... Rachel stopped herself. Never mind, I shouldn't say it. What do you want? She looked at him with an expression that held so much longing it hurt to see. I want this to be real. I want to come home to you and Emma. I want to make cookies and read bedtime stories and have someone defend me in board meetings, not because they're paid to, but because they actually care. I want to stop being so goddamn alone. The confession hung in the air between them, vulnerable and dangerous. Rachel, don't say anything yet, because in 3 weeks, this contract ends, and you'll have your money and your custody of Emma, and you can walk away. I don't want to trap you into something you agreed to under duress. What if I'm not trapped? What if I'm choosing to stay? You don't know me well enough to choose that. Then give me time to know you, real time, not performance time. Marcus squeezed her hand. 3 weeks left on the contract? Fine. Let's make them real. No more pretending, at least with each other, and at the end, we decide what happens next based on truth, not obligation. Rachel searched his face like she was looking for proof this wasn't another manipulation, another trick. You'd do that? Risk your money and your clean exit for something that might not work? I dropped out of college to take care of my dad when he got sick. I married Jennifer because she was pregnant, and I thought it was the right thing to do. I took a night custodian job because it had benefits. My whole life has been doing what I had to do, not what I wanted. Marcus pulled her closer, close enough that he could see the flecks of gold in her brown eyes. Maybe it's time I wanted something for myself. And I want you. Not your money. Not your penthouse. You. Rachel's breath hitched, and then she was kissing him. Not the careful, performative kiss they'd shared at public events, but something desperate and real and full of months of loneliness. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Rachel rested her forehead against his. This is a terrible idea. We barely know each other. The contract explicitly prohibits romantic involvement. Patricia will kill us. Probably, but I'm willing to risk it if you are. Rachel laughed, the sound watery but genuine. You know what the worst part is? I think I'm falling in love with you, and I have no idea if it's real or if I'm just so desperate for connection that I've convinced myself it is. Then we figure it out together. That's what partners do. They went inside, hands still linked, both aware that they'd crossed a line that changed everything. The fake marriage had just become something neither could name yet, but both recognized as worth the risk. The next few days settled into an unexpected rhythm. Rachel started leaving work at 5:30 to have dinner with Marcus and Emma. They cooked together, simple meals that Emma could help with, teaching her to measure ingredients and stir without splashing. After dinner, they'd do homework at the kitchen table, both adults helping Emma sound out words in her reading book. Bedtime became a shared ritual. Rachel would read the first book, Marcus would read the second, and Emma would inevitably ask for a third that usually put her to sleep halfway through. Then Rachel and Marcus would retreat to the living room and talk, real conversations about their lives, their fears, the things that had shaped them. Marcus learned that Rachel's parents had died in a car accident when she was 23, leaving her responsible for 15-year-old Sarah. That she'd built Hartwell Technologies partially because she needed something to control when everything else in her life felt chaotic. That she'd loved Derek once, before ambition and pressure turned them into competitors instead of partners. Rachel learned that Marcus's mother had left when he was 12, just disappeared one day without explanation. That his dad had raised him alone, working double shifts at the welding shop to keep them afloat. That Marcus had dropped out of college, not because he couldn't handle the work, but because his dad got diagnosed with lung cancer and someone needed to drive him to chemo. That Jennifer had been pregnant when they married, then miscarried at 12 weeks, and they'd stayed together out of inertia until Emma was born, and even that wasn't enough to save them. She told me I was going nowhere, that I'd always be nothing more than a janitor. Marcus said this matter-of-factly, the wound old enough to have scarred over. Part of me believed her. Still does sometimes. You're raising a daughter who's thriving. You're running facilities for a major tech company and solving problems engineers can't figure out. You defended me in front of people who terrify most executives. Rachel reached over and took his hand. Jennifer was wrong, and I think you know that now. On Friday evening, Patricia called with news. Jennifer's lawyer contacted me. She's willing to accept the custody modification. Primary custody to you, supervised visits twice a month, child support reduced to $600 per month. Marcus felt his chest loosen with relief. She agreed. Her lawyer made it clear that fighting you now would be expensive and likely unsuccessful, given Emma's stability in her current environment. Jennifer's being practical. Patricia paused. Also, Derek Townsend was arrested this morning. Rachel grabbed the phone. For what? Breaking and entering, theft of corporate documents, and attempted blackmail. Turns out the private investigator he hired made some illegal moves that Derek authorized in writing. Very sloppy for someone usually so careful. He's being held on $500,000 bail. After the call ended, Rachel sat back with an expression of stunned disbelief. It's over. Derek's facing criminal charges. The custody battle is settled. The board voted in my favor. We actually did it. We did. You know. Marcus felt the same disbelief. 3 weeks ago, he'd been a janitor facing potential job loss. Now he had custody of his daughter, a career that paid real money, and something with Rachel that defied easy definition. The contract expires in 2 weeks. I know. So what happens then? Rachel's voice was careful, like she was afraid of the answer. Marcus considered this. What he wanted was to stay, to keep building this strange family they'd created, to see where things with Rachel could go if they had time and truth on their side. But he also knew they'd started from a place of coercion, and that foundation might not be stable enough to build on. I think we see how it feels when there's no contract, no obligation, no threat hanging over us, and then we decide. Rachel nodded slowly. That's fair and terrifying. Most good things are. That weekend, Rachel did something unprecedented. She took Saturday off completely. No laptop, no phone calls, no emergency meetings. Instead, they took Emma to the Museum of Science and Industry, where she dragged them through every exhibit with boundless energy. Marcus watched Rachel get genuinely excited about a machine that showed how soap molecules work, explaining the science to Emma in terms a 6-year-old could understand. He saw her laugh when Emma insisted on climbing into the U-boat exhibit and pretending to be a submarine captain. He noticed that she held his hand while they walked through the museum, casual and natural, like they'd been doing it for years instead of weeks. On the train ride home, Emma fell asleep against Rachel's shoulder. Rachel looked down at her with an expression of such profound tenderness that Marcus felt his chest tighten. I never thought I'd have this. Rachel's voice was barely a whisper. I'd convinced myself I didn't want it. Easier than admitting I was too scared to try. You're not scared now? Terrified, but doing it anyway. She looked up at Marcus. That's growth, right? The next week brought an unexpected visitor. Patricia called Tuesday morning with worry in her voice. Rosa Morales wants to meet with you, David's mother. She somehow got my number and called, asking to speak with Rachel. Rachel went pale. What does she want? She didn't say, just that she'd seen the news about Derek's arrest and the information that came out about the accident. She wants to meet face to face. That evening, Rachel and Marcus drove to a small Mexican restaurant in Pilsen, where Rosa Morales sat waiting in a corner booth. She was in her 50s, wearing a simple dress and crucifix necklace, her face lined with the kind of grief that never fully heals. Patricia had insisted on coming but stayed at a separate table, giving them space. Rachel slid into the booth across from Rosa, and Marcus sat beside her. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Rosa said something in Spanish that Marcus didn't understand. Rachel responded haltingly in the same language, and Marcus realized with surprise that she was fluent. Rosa switched to English. You paid us to be quiet about David. Yes, Rachel's voice was steady despite her shaking hands. I did, and I'm sorry. Why you come now? The lawyers say I cannot sue. Too many years pass. I'm not here because of lawyers. I'm here because, Rachel stopped struggling, because my husband told me I needed to try to give you something real instead of just money. An apology, acknowledgement that what I did was wrong. Rosa studied Rachel with eyes that had seen too much suffering. Your sister, she killed my son. You give money so she not go to jail. Yes, I'm not going to make excuses for that. I chose my sister over justice for David. That was wrong. You have children? Rachel glanced at Marcus. Not biologically, but yes, I'm raising my husband's daughter. Then you understand. You understand why a mother do anything to save her child. The words hit Rachel visibly. She nodded, tears streaming down her face. Your sister, Rosa continued, she write me letters. Every year on March 15, she say sorry. She say she go to church and pray for David. She try to be good person now. Rachel blinked in surprise. I didn't know Sarah contacted you. She'd not use your money to pay me. She use her money, teacher money. Small amount each year, she say is for David's brothers, for college. Rosa pulled out her wallet and showed a worn photograph. My son, he want to be engineer. He was good boy. Marcus saw in the photo a young man with Rosa's eyes and a bright smile, frozen at 19 forever. Mrs. Morales, I can't undo what happened. Rachel's voice cracked. But I set up a scholarship fund in David's name at UIC for first-generation college students in engineering. I should have done it years ago. I was a coward. Rosa was quiet for a long time. Then she reached across the table and placed her hand over Rachel's. I am Catholic. I believe in forgiveness. Even when it hurts so much, I think I cannot breathe. You did wrong thing. Your sister did wrong thing. But you both carry this, she touched her chest, this pain here, forever. That is your punishment, living with it. I'm so sorry. I know, I see it. Your husband, Rosa looked at Marcus. He love you? I think so. Then you have chance at happy. Take it. Do not waste time on guilt that changed nothing. Honor my David by being good to that little girl, by making good choices now. After they left the restaurant, Rachel cried in the car for 20 minutes while Marcus held her. When she finally caught her breath, she looked at him with red-rimmed eyes. How did you know I needed to do that? Because you can't move forward while you're still running from the pound. And I think you want to move forward now, with Emma, with me, with life. I do. God help me, I really do. The final week of the contract arrived too quickly. Marcus and Rachel hadn't discussed what would happen after, both of them avoiding the conversation like it might shatter whatever fragile thing they'd built. On Wednesday evening, Patricia came to the penthouse with final paperwork. The contract expires Friday at midnight. At that point, Marcus, you'll receive the final payment of $150,000. The marriage can be annulled if both parties agree, or you can remain legally married and renegotiate terms. She set several documents on the table: annulment papers, contract extensions, property agreements. You need to decide what happens next. After Patricia left, Marcus and Rachel sat on the couch staring at the papers like they might contain answers. What do you want? Rachel asked quietly. I asked you first, weeks ago on the balcony. I know what I want. I want you to stay. I want Emma to keep calling me Mom. I want to figure out how to make this weird, complicated thing we've built into something lasting. She turned to face him fully. But I need to know it's what you want too. Not because of money or obligation, but because you choose it. Marcus thought about the moment 3 weeks ago when he'd agreed to this arrangement out of desperation. About how Rachel had seemed like a monster using his vulnerability against him. About how he'd planned to take the money and run. Then he thought about Emma reading bedtime stories with Rachel. About cooking dinner together. About Rosa Morales offering forgiveness neither of them deserved. About falling asleep on this couch with his head on Rachel's shoulder while they watched bad movies. I choose to stay, not for the money, you can keep it. Not because I'm trapped, because somewhere in the last 6 weeks, I stopped pretending to love you and started actually doing it. Rachel's breath caught. You love me? Yeah, I do. Even though you're bossy and controlling and you work too much and you put hot sauce on everything, I love you anyway. I love you too, even though you leave wet towels on the bathroom floor and you're stubborn as hell and you won't admit when you're wrong about directions. They were both laughing and crying at the same time, the absurdity and reality of it crashing together. Marcus picked up the annulment papers and tore them in half. We started this marriage as a lie. Let's try it as the truth instead. Rachel kissed him then, deep and certain and full of promise. When Emma wandered out from her room because she heard voices, she found them on the couch holding each other. Are you guys okay? We're perfect, sweetheart. Rachel held out an arm, and Emma climbed up between them. How would you feel about this being forever instead of just for a while? Emma looked from Rachel to Marcus with serious eyes. Forever, forever? Like you're really my mom and not just pretending? Really, truly, if you want that. Emma threw her arms around Rachel's neck. I want that more than anything. Marcus wrapped his arms around both of them, this family they'd accidentally created, and thought about Derek's words at the board meeting. Enjoy your little fantasy while it lasts. But this wasn't fantasy anymore. It was real and messy and complicated and more valuable than any contract. They'd started with a lie that had somehow transformed into truth, like cookies spreading in heat, becoming something different but better. Outside the windows, Chicago sparkled in the November darkness. Inside the penthouse, three people who'd found each other through desperation were choosing to stay together through hope. The contract would expire in 2 days, but what they'd built would last much longer. They'd make sure of it. 6 months after the contract expired, Marcus stood in the Hartwell Technologies executive conference room, watching Rachel present quarterly results to a packed audience of investors and analysts. She commanded the room with the same confidence he'd seen that first night, but something fundamental had shifted. She smiled when she talked about employee retention programs. She made jokes that actually landed. She mentioned spending time with family without looking like she was reading from a script. When the presentation ended and the analysts filed out asking follow-up questions, Margaret caught Marcus in the hallway. You know what the board said after that meeting? This is the Rachel we always needed. You did that. Whatever you two have together, it's made her whole in a way we've never seen. Marcus thought about mornings making breakfast while Emma practiced spelling words, about Rachel coming home at reasonable hours and actually relaxing on weekends, about the three of them figuring out how to be a family without instructions or contracts. She did it herself. I just gave her a reason to want to. That evening, they celebrated with dinner at a quiet Italian restaurant, not Lucia's, which existed only in their fabricated backstory, but a real place they'd discovered together. Emma practiced using her fork properly while telling them about her school's upcoming science fair. Can we make a volcano? Sophie's doing a solar system and Tyler's doing something with magnets, but I want an erupting volcano. Rachel considered this seriously. Volcanoes are dramatic, but the science is fairly basic. What about a demonstration of water filtration? You could show how dirty water becomes clean through different layers of materials. Will it explode? No, but you could add food coloring to make it visually interesting. Emma's face fell slightly. Rachel caught Marcus's eye and he saw her reassessing. Or we could do both. Filtration for the science, volcano for the dramatic finale. Best of both worlds. Emma brightened immediately and Rachel looked pleased with herself for finding the compromise. These small moments of parental problem-solving had become their new normal, less about pretending to be a family and more about actually being one. Later that week, Jennifer came for her scheduled visit with Emma. The custody arrangement had settled into a workable rhythm. 2 weekends a month, rotating holidays, summer vacations split evenly. Jennifer had remarried Richard Park in a small ceremony, and the desperation that used to drive her interactions with Marcus had faded into polite civility. She picked up Emma from school on Friday, and when she brought her back Sunday evening, she stayed for a few minutes in the penthouse entryway. This was new. Usually she dropped Emma off and left immediately. Richard and I are moving to Denver. He got offered a VP position at a regional bank. Marcus felt his stomach drop. When? End of summer. I know it complicates the custody schedule, but we'll work something out. Maybe longer visits, less frequently, or Emma could fly out for school breaks. Emma had already run to her room, eager to show Rachel a rock collection she'd started. Jennifer watched her go with an expression that might have been regret. She's happy here, happier than I ever managed to make her. I used to resent that, but now I'm just grateful she has it. She still needs her mother tongue. I know, and I'm trying to be better at that. But you and Rachel, you're her real parents now. I'm just the person who visits. Jennifer's voice caught. That's hard to accept, but it's true. After she left, Marcus found Rachel helping Emma organize rocks by color on her bedroom floor. Jennifer's moving to Denver. Rachel looked up sharply. When? August. She says we'll figure out a new schedule. Emma? Rachel's voice gentled. How do you feel about Mama Jennifer moving away? Emma shrugged, focused on her rocks. It's okay. She'll still visit sometimes. And I have you guys. The casual acceptance hurt more than tears would have. At 6 years old, Emma had already learned not to depend too heavily on Jennifer's presence. Marcus caught Rachel's eye and saw the same sadness reflected there. Not for themselves, but for the relationship Emma and Jennifer had never quite built. That night, after Emma was asleep, Marcus found Rachel in her office reviewing contracts despite the late hour. Old habits died hard. You promised you'd stop working past 9. I'm almost done, just finalizing the acquisition terms for that startup in Austin. But she closed the laptop when Marcus sat down across from her. Denver is far. Yeah, but maybe it's better. Clean break. Emma won't feel torn between two households in the same city. Rachel was quiet for a moment. Do you ever regret this? Giving up your freedom for a ready-made family and a complicated woman with a difficult past? Marcus had learned that Rachel's insecurities tended to surface late at night when exhaustion lowered her defenses. I gave up working nights and barely seeing my daughter for a job that challenges me and a woman who makes me want to be better than I thought I could be. That's not sacrifice, that's winning. Even though we started with lies? Especially because we started with lies and chose truth anyway. That takes more courage than starting clean. Rachel smiled, tired but genuine. Patricia says we're her favorite clients. She's never seen a fake marriage turn into a real one before. We're trend-setting. We're insane. That too. 2 months later, Marcus walked into the penthouse after a facilities management conference in Dallas to find Rachel and Emma covered in flour, attempting to make homemade pasta. The kitchen looked like a pin had gone off in a bakery. We're making fettuccine, Emma announced proudly, holding up a lumpy strand of dough. I see that. How's it going? Rachel wiped flour off her forehead, leaving a white streak. Harder than YouTube made it look. But we're committed now. They eventually produced something resembling pasta, which they boiled and served with jarred marinara sauce because the homemade sauce had somehow burned despite careful attention. Emma declared it the best dinner ever, possibly because she'd helped make it, and they ate at the kitchen counter instead of the formal dining room. After Emma went to bed, Marcus and Rachel tackled the kitchen cleanup together. Rachel washed while Marcus dried, moving around each other with the ease of people who'd learned each other's rhythms. I got an offer today. Rachel's voice was casual, but Marcus heard the weight underneath. CEO position at a firm in San Francisco. Tech hardware company, bigger than Hartwell, nearly double my current salary. Marcus's hands stilled on the plate he was drying. That's incredible. When do they need an answer? 2 weeks. It would mean relocating, all of us. There it was, the elephant that had been lurking since they'd decided to make this real. Rachel's career had no geographic limits. Marcus's entire life had been lived within a 20-mile radius of Chicago. What do you want to do? Rachel set down the dish she was washing and turned to face him. 5 years ago, I would have said yes immediately. Bigger company, more prestige, new challenges. But that was before I understood what I'd be giving up. You'd be giving up Chicago? I'd be giving up the life we've built here. Emma's school, where she finally has friends. Your family being nearby when your aunt visits. The board that trusts me. This kitchen where we make terrible pasta. Her voice wavered. I'd be trading something real for something bigger, and I've learned that bigger isn't always better. Marcus pulled her close, flour and all. Tell me what you want, not what you think you should want. Rachel was quiet against his chest. I want to stay. I want to keep building Hartwell into something meaningful. I want Emma to finish elementary school with Sophie. I want you to keep solving impossible facilities problems and coming home proud of yourself. I want Sunday morning pancakes and terrible family movie nights in this messy, imperfect life we've accidentally created. Then stay. Turn down San Francisco. You'd be okay with that? Not resenting me later for choosing you over career advancement? Rachel, Marcus tilted her face up to meet his eyes. You choosing us over a bigger title is the least selfish thing I've ever seen you do. That's not sacrifice. That's knowing what matters. She declined the offer the next day, and the board voted her a raise and additional equity that made the San Francisco salary look modest by comparison. Margaret told Marcus privately that they'd been prepared to counter any offer Rachel received. She was too valuable to lose. The summer brought changes. Jennifer moved to Denver with Richard and established a new routine of visiting every other month for long weekends. Emma handled it with the resilience of children who adapt when they must. Sarah visited from Boston with her husband Tom, meeting Marcus and Emma for the first time. The dinner was awkward initially. Sarah's guilt over David Morales hung in the air like smoke. But Emma's innocent questions about Boston and teaching broke the ice. By dessert, Sarah was laughing at Emma's impression of her science teacher, and Tom was swapping welding stories with Marcus about their respective fathers. After Emma went to bed, Sarah pulled Rachel aside on the balcony. You did this for me, protected me, gave up your peace of mind, paid my debts, and I never said thank you properly. You didn't need to. I did, I do, and I need to say something else. You can't keep carrying my guilt. What I did was my responsibility. You helped me survive the consequences, but you don't own them. Let yourself be happy. Oh, Rachel, you've earned it. That conversation shifted something in Rachel. She stopped checking her phone compulsively during dinner. She took a full week off in August to rent a house in Door County where they did nothing but swim and hike and read books on the porch. She laughed more easily and slept more soundly and seemed lighter in a way Marcus had never seen before. In September, Hartwell Technologies launched a scholarship program for children of custodial and facilities workers. Full tuition to any college in Illinois, plus stipends for books and housing. Rachel announced it at a company meeting and specifically credited Marcus for the inspiration. My husband taught me that the people who keep our buildings running deserve the same opportunities for their families as the people writing code on our computers. This program is small recompense for years of overlooking that truth. The standing ovation was genuine, and afterwards several custodial workers approached Marcus to shake his hand and thank him. One older man named Jerome, who'd worked nights for 15 years, had tears in his eyes. My daughter's a junior in high school, smart as hell, but I couldn't figure out how to pay for college. Now she can go anywhere in state. You did that. Marcus had to excuse himself to the bathroom to collect himself. When he emerged, Rachel was waiting. That's what power should do. Open doors for people instead of closing them. You taught me that. By December, life had settled into rhythms that felt permanent. Emma was thriving in second grade, reading at a fourth grade level, and declaring she wanted to be a scientist who studies volcanoes. Rachel's company had its best revenue year ever and was being courted for acquisition by tech giants. Marcus had restructured the entire facilities operation and was presenting at national conferences about sustainable building management. On Christmas morning, they opened presents in pajamas, while Emma tore through boxes with the enthusiasm of someone who'd never quite believed stability would last. Rachel gave Marcus a vintage welding jacket that had belonged to his father. She'd tracked it down through his aunt and had it restored. Your dad would be proud of you. Who you became, what you built. I wanted you to have something of his. Marcus couldn't speak for a moment, just held the worn leather and remembered his father teaching him to read blueprints in their garage. He gave Rachel a first edition of her favorite childhood book, The Secret Garden, that he'd found through a rare book dealer. Inside, he'd written, "For the woman who taught me that the most beautiful things grow in unexpected places. Thank you for taking a chance on a janitor." Emma gave them both drawings she'd made in art class, portraits of their family that included her, Marcus, Rachel, and inexplicably a dragon. That's Sparky, our family dragon. He protects us. Every family needs a dragon. Rachel hung the picture on the refrigerator with ceremony. That afternoon, Patricia came by with her wife Anne for Christmas dinner. Over turkey that Marcus had somehow not burned, Patricia raised her glass. A toast to the strangest case I've ever handled and the best outcome I've ever seen. You two took a transaction and turned it into a partnership. That's rare and precious. Anne added, also, you gave Patricia her first white hair. Look. She pointed to a silver strand in Patricia's otherwise dark hair. That was the board meeting where Derek revealed the Morales situation. I aged 10 years that day. But we survived it. Rachel reached for Marcus's hand across the table. That's what matters. Later, after Emma was asleep and Patricia and Anne had left, Marcus found Rachel standing by the living room window watching snow fall over Lake Michigan. He wrapped his arms around her from behind, and she leaned into him. A year ago, I was terrified and alone and convinced I was about to lose everything. A year ago, I was cleaning this building at midnight and trying to figure out how to keep my daughter. And now? Marcus thought about Emma sleeping peacefully down the hall, secure in the knowledge that both her parents would be there in the morning, about Rachel's genuine smile when she walked through the door each evening, about the life they'd built from desperate lies and stubborn hope. Now I have everything I didn't know I needed. A daughter who's thriving, a wife I actually love, work that matters, a family that chose each other instead of settling for blood relations. Rachel turned in his arms to face him. You know what Emma asked me yesterday? She wanted to know if we could adopt a dog. She said every real family has a dog. What did you tell her? That we think about it, but what I wanted to say was yes, because she's right. We're a real family now, not pretend, not performance, real. So should we get a dog? Rachel laughed. Probably. Something big and ridiculous that sheds everywhere and ruins the furniture. Complete the transformation from corporate executive to actual human being. They stood together in the quiet apartment, watching snow blanket the city in white. Tomorrow there would be work emails and parent-teacher conferences and the million small complications of life. But tonight there was just this, two people who'd been strangers 13 months ago, now bound by choices that had somehow become love. Marcus remembered Rachel's words from that first night. If you say yes, both our lives change forever and there's no going back. She'd been right. Everything had changed, but not in the way either of them had expected. They'd started as strangers making a desperate bargain. They'd become partners navigating crisis. And finally they'd become family, messy and imperfect, and built on a foundation of lies that had somehow transformed into the most honest thing either had ever known. Rachel pulled Marcus toward the couch where they curled up together under the throw blanket Emma had helped pick out. Outside, Chicago sparkled with Christmas lights and fresh snow. Inside, two people who'd been alone had found home in each other. Thank you for saying yes that night. Rachel's voice was drowsy. Even though I forced your hand, even though it was wrong, thank you. Thank you for being scared enough to ask, desperate enough to risk it, brave enough to let it become real. They fell asleep that way, tangled together on expensive furniture in a penthouse that had once felt like a stage set but now felt like home. The contract that had brought them together had expired months ago, its terms fulfilled and discarded. What remained was something no contract could capture, the kind of love that grows when two people stop performing and start living. In the morning, Emma would wake them up demanding pancakes and asking again about the dog. Rachel would make coffee while Marcus attempted breakfast. They'd probably burn something and definitely make a mess. It would be ordinary and chaotic and perfect. Because the best things in life aren't the ones we plan carefully. They're the ones that ambush us in midnight hallways and force us to choose between safety and possibility, between loneliness and risk, between who we've always been and who we might become if we're brave enough to try. Marcus and Rachel had chosen to try, and in trying, they'd found something neither had known they were missing. A partner, a parent, a person who saw them completely and loved them anyway. That was worth more than any contract, more than any amount of money, more than anything either had thought they wanted back when this started. It was worth everything.